For as long as I can remember, I've been the one who holds things together. The responsible one. The one who makes sure the lights stay on, that the rent is paid, that birthdays don't pass without gifts, and that every Christmas looks perfect in the family photo, even when I had to skip meals to afford it. It wasn't always like this. When I was a kid, I believed love was enough, that if you cared deeply for your family, they would care back. But over the years, love became a currency I paid in full, and somehow, I was always in debt. Still, when the idea of a family vacation came up, I felt that same naive spark again. It had been years since we all spent time together. No arguments about money. No tension about who's doing well and who's not. Just family. Laughing, relaxing, maybe even healing some of the unspoken cracks between us. I spent months planning it. Every night after work, I'd scroll through travel websites, looking for something special. Somewhere warm, with beaches that glowed under golden sunsets. I wanted it to be perfect, the kind of trip we'd talk about for years. The total came to $22,000. A number that made my stomach twist, but I didn't flinch. I told myself it was worth it. You can't put a price on family. I whispered as I clicked confirm payment. I imagined the look on their faces when I told them. Mom's delighted smile. Dad's proud smile. My little brother's disbelief. When I called that night, their reactions didn't disappoint. "Oh, honey, that's incredible," Mom said. "You really didn't have to." "Ava," Dad added, but in that half-hearted way that means, "I'm glad you did." For a week after, I lived off that warmth. It felt like I'd finally done something that would bring us together again. I rearranged my work schedule, packed new summer clothes, and kept refreshing my email for the itinerary. But the days passed and nothing came. Then, one Friday evening, I called home. "Hey, I just wanted to check. What date are we flying out?" I asked, my voice light hopeful. There was a pause, a long one. Finally, Mom said, "Aw, honey, we already went last week." I blinked. "You? What?" "The trip," she continued casually. "We went. It was just for family." The words hit me like glass shattering inside my chest. "I am family," I said, my voice cracking on the last word. There was a muffled sound on the other end. Maybe Dad in the background saying something, but Mom's reply was sharp and simple. "It just wouldn't have been the same with you there. You work so much, and well, it was nice to just relax without all the stress. All the stress." That's what I was to them. I sat there in my small apartment, staring at the wall. The phone still pressed to my ear long after the call ended. My hands were shaking. My heart felt like it had forgotten how to beat properly. I had paid for every plane ticket, every hotel room, every meal, and they went without me. That night, I sat on my bed surrounded by the receipts. Proof that I'd paid for a happiness I was never invited to share. I cried until the sun started rising, the early light slipping through my curtains like a silent witness. For days, I tried to make sense of it. Tried to convince myself there had been some misunderstanding. But deep down, I knew there wasn't. They had gone on the trip. They had laughed, eaten, posed for pictures, and I hadn't even crossed their minds. That's when something inside me shifted. A quiet, painful crack that didn't heal, but hardened. It was the day I learned that love, without respect, is just servitude dressed as devotion. And I promised myself, though I didn't know it yet, that the next time they came asking, I wouldn't forget those 4 words. Only for family. The days after their vacation felt like living in an echo chamber. Every sound dull, every thought circling back to the same question. How could they do this to me? I stopped answering their calls at first. Not out of anger, but because I didn't trust my voice to hold steady. I knew if I heard my mother's voice, I'd crumble. And if I heard my father's, I might scream. But silence, I soon learned, is its own kind of torment. It's heavy, suffocating. Like the air just before a thunderstorm, thick with things you can't say. When I finally picked up, Mom acted like nothing had happened. "How's work, sweetie?" "We've missed hearing from you," she said in that overly sweet tone, the one she used when she wanted something. "You went on the trip," I replied quietly. A pause. Then a light laugh. "Oh, that. You're still upset about that?" I closed my eyes, trying to steady my breathing. "You went on the trip that I paid for. You didn't even tell me." "Well, Ava," she said, the softness gone from her voice now, replaced by something colder. Defensive. "You're always so busy. You wouldn't have enjoyed it anyway. We didn't want you to feel stressed or stressed." I cut in. "Do you even hear yourself? I paid $22,000 so we could go together. Not so you could." "Lower your voice," she snapped. "You're being dramatic. It's not that serious. Not that serious." That phrase haunted me for weeks. I began replaying years of memories, little moments I'd brushed off as nothing before. The time they forgot my birthday, but threw a surprise dinner for my brother 2 weeks later. The way my mom always called me, only when she needed help with bills. The subtle glances exchanged between them, when I offered to pay for something, as if it were a given, not a gift. All those small betrayals had been stacking up like hidden debts, and now, the balance had come due. I started noticing things I'd never allowed myself to see. My parents had always talked about family like it was sacred. Yet somehow, that sacred circle never seemed to have space for me. I was the provider, the background support, the safety net that caught everyone when they fell. But who caught me? Nobody. One evening, I drove to their house. I told myself I just wanted closure. A conversation, a real explanation. But deep down, I think I still wanted them to apologize. To admit they were wrong. To make it right. When I walked in, the living room still smelled faintly of sunscreen and ocean breeze. A framed photo sat on the table. The whole family smiling in front of a tropical beach. My mom, dad, brother. Even my cousins. Except me. It felt like a punch to the gut.
"Oh, Avi,"
Mom said, appearing from the kitchen. "Want some iced tea? I just made some." I stared at her. Words caught in my throat. "You put the picture out." She glanced at it unfazed. "Isn't it lovely? Such great memories." I wanted to scream. Instead, I whispered, "Do you even realize what you did?" Dad walked in then, his tone dismissive. "You're overreacting. We thought you understood. It was just a timing thing. You couldn't take time off work, right?" "I would've," I said, my voice trembling. "You didn't even ask." Mom sighed, like she was the one exhausted by the conversation. "Ava, stop making everything about you. We needed a break. The family needed to bond." "The family," I repeated. Without me, for a long moment, none of us said anything. The silence was thick. Suffocating. The kind that fills the space between people who used to love each other, but no longer understand what that means. I left without saying goodbye. That night, back in my apartment, I deleted their vacation photos from my messages, blocked their number for a while, and sat in the quiet. It wasn't anger anymore. It was clarity. Painful, sharp, and cold as ice. But clarity nonetheless. They hadn't just excluded me from a vacation. They had shown me my place in their world. And it wasn't beside them. It was beneath them. But I promised myself one thing as I stared out my window at the empty street below. The next time they came to me for help, I wouldn't be the one holding everything together. Next time, I'd let the silence speak for me. A month passed. A month of silence, of unanswered texts, of watching the phone light up and go dark again. I told myself I was fine, that I didn't need to hear their voices, that I didn't miss them. But the truth was, some nights I still caught myself checking their social media, looking for signs of regret that never came. Instead, I saw more of the same pictures of family dinners, laughter, filled captions, inside jokes that didn't include me. I wasn't angry anymore. I was empty. Then, one morning, my phone buzzed with a message from Mom. The rent is overdue. Did you send the money yet? Just like that. No greeting. No how are you. No mention of what happened. As if the last month hadn't been a knife in my chest. I stared at the message for a long time. My hands didn't shake this time. My heart didn't race. I just felt calm. For the first time in years, I realized I had power. The kind of power that comes when you stop begging for love and start demanding respect. I typed my reply slowly, deliberately. Only for family, remember. I hit send. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then came the typing dots, then nothing. Then again. Typing, stopping, typing. Finally. My phone buzzed with a call. I didn't answer. I sat there in the quiet, watching the screen flash with my mother's name, and smiled. Not out of cruelty, but out of relief. The kind of relief that comes when you finally stop bleeding for people who never noticed you were hurt. For days, I didn't respond. And in that silence, something inside me started to heal. I began to realize how much of my life I'd built around their approval. Every decision, from my job to where I lived, had been chosen with them in mind. What they'd think, what they'd need, what would make them proud. But now, I started asking a different question. What do I want? I started therapy. The first session felt awkward. I didn't even know where to begin. But when the therapist asked me to describe my family, I said, "They're everything to me." Then I paused, corrected myself, and added softly, "They were everything to me." I began to rediscover myself piece by piece. I joined a local book club. Started going for long walks after work. I cooked dinner for myself. Just for me. Something I'd never done without a reason. Every small act felt like rebellion. Every laugh that wasn't tied to their approval felt like freedom. Meanwhile, the calls kept coming. First from Mom, then from Dad, then from my brother. Their tone shifted from annoyed to pleading. Rent was piling up. Bills were overdue. Their world, the one I had quietly funded, was starting to crumble. I didn't feel joy watching it happen. Just a quiet, bittersweet sadness. Because I knew they could have avoided it all. If only they had treated me like more than their safety net. One night, my brother texted me. "They're freaking out. You're really not gonna help." I stared at the screen for a moment before replying. I already did. For years. And I meant it. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on my balcony under the soft glow of city lights. The world felt strangely peaceful, like I'd finally stepped out of a storm I didn't realize I'd been standing in. I thought about that $22,000. About how much it had cost me. Not just in money, but in heartbreak, in trust, in years of trying to earn love that was never unconditional. And yet, for the first time, I didn't feel like I'd lost anything. I felt like I'd bought my freedom. By withholding that one transfer, that one favor, I'd rewritten the rules. I wasn't the caretaker anymore. I wasn't the forgotten one. I was someone who finally understood her own worth. As I watched the city stretch before me, I whispered to myself, not with bitterness, but with peace. Only for family. This time, the words didn't hurt. This time, they meant me. Summer came again, the same season that once broke me. But this time, the air felt different, lighter, cleaner. As if the world had decided I'd earned a gentler kind of sun. It had been nearly 3 months since I last spoke to my parents. The calls had stopped. The messages faded from pleading to occasional guilt, laced silence. I suppose they realized I wasn't going to be their safety net anymore. And strangely, that realization didn't sting. It soothed me. I'd spent those months rebuilding myself from the quiet. Therapy helped. But so did the little things: morning coffee by the window, long walks with no destination, music that made me feel something again. I started writing, not for anyone else, just for me. About what it means to lose your family but find yourself in the wreckage. One morning, as I flipped through my old planner, I saw a note I'd written months ago. Family vacation, June 14. The words used to burn. Now, they made me smile, so I decided to rewrite the story. I booked myself a trip. One ticket, one name. Destination Santorini. A place I'd always wanted to visit, but never had the courage to, because I'd been saving my time, my money, and my joy for family. This time, I didn't tell anyone. I didn't need approval or company or permission. When I arrived, the world opened like a postcard. Whitewashed buildings tumbling down cliffs, the sea stretching out like liquid sapphire, the wind smelling faintly of salt and lemon. I stood there, luggage in hand, heart pounding, realizing this. This was what freedom tasted like. For days, I wandered the narrow cobblestone streets alone. I learned to eat slowly, savoring every bite of roasted vegetables and feta. I laughed with strangers at a seaside cafe. I watched the sunset bleed gold into the ocean and didn't feel lonely. I felt alive. On the fourth night, as the sky turned lavender, I sat at a quiet table overlooking the sea and thought of my family. For the first time, there was no anger left. Just sadness, soft and familiar. Like an old scar you still trace with your fingers sometimes. I realized something then: family isn't defined by shared DNA. It's defined by shared care, by mutual respect, by love that doesn't keep score. And somewhere between the laughter of strangers and the song of the wind, I understood that I hadn't lost a family. I'd simply outgrown one that refused to see me as part of it. The day before I flew home, my phone buzzed with a message. It was from my mother. "We miss you. Maybe we should talk." I stared at it for a long time. There was no venom in me, no triumph. Just the calm certainty of someone who has finally stepped into her own life. I typed back, "Maybe. But only if we can talk like family, not like a bank account." No reply came that night. And that was fine. Some wounds don't need closure, they just need distance. When I returned home, I printed one photo from my trip, me standing barefoot on a beach, smiling in the glow of the setting sun. I framed it and placed it on my shelf where the family photo used to hang. It wasn't revenge. It was a declaration. A reminder that I'm whole, even alone. A week later, a letter arrived from my dad. Just a few lines written in his uneven handwriting. "Maybe we didn't treat you right. Maybe we forgot how much you've done. We're sorry, Ava. We really are." I folded the letter carefully and placed it in my journal. Forgiveness would take time, but at least the silence had started to speak something new. Honesty. That evening, I made tea and sat by my window. The same one where I'd once cried through the night after that phone call. The sky outside was painted gold again, and for a moment, I felt everything. The pain, the peace, the pride. I whispered softly, to no one in particular, only for family, but this time it wasn't a boundary drawn in bitterness. It was a vow. To love, to give, to forgive, but only to those who truly stand beside me. And as the sun sank beneath the horizon, I realized the summer that once began with betrayal had finally ended with freedom. The family that left me behind had, unknowingly, given me the best gift of all, myself.